Welcome, welcome, welcome to Leadershipisation, all things leadership. I'm Beth Berghan. I'm a global leadership and communication coach, and I love the work that I do, both one-on-one with my clients, but also often with their teams and with groups of clients who are wanting to accelerate their leadership and their communication skills. So I'm here most every Tuesday at around about this time, 1 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time, which is Brizzy in Queensland, or 2 p.m. Sydney time or Australian Eastern Daylight Time. Hey, over the past few weeks, we've been talking a lot about emotional intelligence, and that led me on to the conversation that we started last week about what I call leadership intelligence. And what we identified last week was that there are lots of different skill sets that make up this leadership intelligence. And some of those skill sets were similar to what those skill sets that make up our emotional intelligence or our EQ. And one that both of those have in common is active listening. So today, we're going to start our conversation about active listening. And as I said before, it's one of those critical skills that makes up leadership intelligence. So let's start by having a look at what is it? And then what I want to do is look at how can I actually improve the skill of active listening. So we'll kind of do some broad brushstrokes across that in today's session. And next week, what I'll do is dig down a little deeper into active listening. The critical thing for you to remember is this. Active listening is it's a lifetime journey, like so many things associated with our personal and our professional growth and development. It really is a lifetime journey, but the awesome news is that really small improvements, small awareness on your part, and those small changes make a really big difference to your active listening effectiveness. So that's great, isn't it? What I love about active listening is that it brings together a combination of skills. And this is why sometimes it's easy to completely miss one part of it. So it's really all about things like reading people's body language, like noticing what you're noticing about their body language, listening for that tone of voice. It's also about maintaining your own level of attention. You know how with some people we can kind of wander off and we're over here and not actually paying attention. And it's also about awareness of your own emotions so that you can be regulating your emotions and the response that you're having to whatever is being said around you. It's also about paraphrasing, so repeating back some of the things that people are saying to you to check to see that you've understood them well. And those are the kind of more specific techniques that we'll look at next week. So the bottom line here is that active listening is really about self-awareness, and we've talked a lot about self-awareness over the last few weeks as we've identified what emotional intelligence is all about. And self-awareness is also an important aspect of your leadership intelligence. So it's a combination of that self-awareness and your emotional intelligence. It's all about you actually hearing what people are saying and really tuning in to their thoughts and their feelings. So when you are actively listening, you're actively involved in it. It's not a competition. You're not trying to outthink them or come up with a better idea. You're actually listening so that what you can do is create a two-way interaction. Now, when you research and you look and you start to research into active listening, it's often described as having three components. And I'll just go over those very briefly for you now. The first one is that it's got a cognitive aspect. And this is where we want the information, and we want that to be quite explicit information. And We want to be able to integrate that, comprehend it, understand it, and actually integrate it into our thinking as the listener. The second aspect is the emotional aspect, and this is where what you're able to do is to be calm, to be compassionate, and to manage all of those emotions. The third part is behavioural, and this is all about you then conveying your interest, conveying the fact that you understand, and you're going to demonstrate that most effectively when you're able to do verbal and non-verbal. So you're able to give those signs to whoever you're communicating with. Now, lots of people the next step is, well, how do I actually practice active listening? Well, what I've done is come up with like 7 or 8 questions, I think it is, that will help to give you some idea about what can you be doing. And the first one for us to ask ourselves is, well, what's my default listening style? When I'm listening to people, where do I naturally go to? And there's about 4 of those. The first one is a task-orientated listener. Now, as you can imagine, if you're task-orientated, it's all about efficiency. It's all about just give me the important information and we'll forget about the rest of it. So a task-orientated person can sometimes come across as a little bit impatient when they're the listener, because you want whoever is talking to you to hurry up and give you that information. So you might find yourself being a little bit frustrated and thinking, gosh, I wish they would hurry up. The second one is analytical. And this is as a listener where what you're wanting to do is to analyze the problem. You're wanting to delve in a little bit and, oh, okay, let's check out. I need more information here. The third type of listening style is relational. So this is all about building those connections. And so you're responding to people's emotions. So you're listening much more and looking much more to notice what those emotions are, because that's where that's what your learning style is. And so that's what you're going to respond to. And the final one is critical. And this is where what you're doing is you're sitting there and you're judging the speaker, the person. You're also judging the content. Now, it's worthwhile asking yourself, which one of these do I typically use? Because once you know which one is your default listening style, you're then going to be in a better position to determine, what do I need to change to be able to shift my listening style to suit the particular situation. Now, as I said earlier, that's the kind of thing we'll get into in a lot more detail for next week's session. So the question that I'm often asked at this point is, well, Beth, how do I best listen then? What style do I choose? It actually comes down to your choice, noticing what you're noticing and determining, what do I want to get out of this interaction? What is my goal for this interaction? What message am I wanting to send them? But also reading those cues really early on to see, this is where they're at. This is where I need to meet them. Okay. Next question for you is, why do I need to listen right now? This feeds into what I was just saying to you. What is the goal of the conversation? What is it that you want? And just as importantly, what is it that they need? Because obviously you're going to listen differently with a different style to a coworker who's wanting to give you feedback, then you're going to listen to a friend who's wanting to give you that emotional support. Yeah? Think about that. Based on the 4 that we worked through, think about what that might be. Next question for you to ask yourself is, who is the focus of this conversation? Why would we ask that question? We would ask that question because often as a listener, the mistake that we make is that we take what the person is saying on board, and we decide that we've got to one up them. So we decide we've got to come up with a better response or a better example or a better idea. We need to keep the focus where it needs to be. And you've got to work hard on doing that. And this is part of that active listening skill that we've been talking about. So that what you're actually doing is recognizing this isn't about me. This isn't about me and my story. This is actually about keeping the focus where it needs to be. So I might have a whole lot of internal noise going on. I might have a whole lot of, I've got an awesome story I really want to tell you. Calm down. No need to share it. The focus is on the person who's doing the speaking. And I'll give you a really good example of one of those in a few minutes. The fourth question for you to ask yourself, and I actually have this on the wall next to my computer screen as a reminder for when I'm coaching. And the question is, why am I talking? Now, if you wait, why am I talking? So often when we're listening, what happens is that instead of really paying attention, we're just having a little rehearsal in our head about what our response might be. And so we stop listening to what they're saying because our focus has gone on to, this is how I'm going to reply. It's important that you learn to listen without an agenda and that you listen to the end of what they have to say and then you respond instead of drifting off and coming up with a great response that actually only addresses some of what they've spoken about. It's also important to maintain that eye contact and those non-verbals and to be curious and ask questions so that you can get all of the information. This is the hardest aspect. It's absolutely the hardest. Why? Because we're used to, I want to tell them what I did. I want to tell them about how this happened to me one time. I want to tell them about when I did really well and how I dealt with it. It's not about that. The next question is to ask yourself is, am I still listening? Because one of the things that we do is we go, I get that, and we tune out. You tell yourself, I've heard all the main ideas. I don't need to listen to all this kind of trivia. And our attention wanders. Revisit. If you need to, revisit. And this is a trick for active listening is just revisit and say something like, I missed what you just said. Can you repeat that last point, please? And that gets you back into the game again. That's really important. The next question to ask yourself is, what am I missing? Like, it's not just about nodding, and paraphrasing or parroting back at them what they've said to you. It's really important that you ask questions and that you show that you understand and that you want additional information. And that's all about those verbal and those non-verbal cues that you're giving. But it's also, remember I said earlier, notice what you're noticing. It's also about you noticing their verbal and their non-verbal cues and checking to make sure that there's congruence between those. Is what they're saying being reflected by their tone of voice and their non-verbals? And if it's not, that getting curious, asking questions can be asking about what might have been left unsaid. Now, I'll give you an example of this, and this is really similar to what we talked about earlier. Someone might say to you, I'm really worried about my job interview. And you reply, it'll be great. It took me ages to feel good at interviews. No. That makes it about you. And it ignores their concerns. So instead, might be, I'm really worried about my job interview. Yeah, I'm a little nervous at job interviews too. What's actually worrying you? So different. Wind the person back into the conversation, demonstrate that you're actively listening and you're not making it about you. You're hearing that there is something in what they haven't said. You're asking for more information. Okay? If you're already a leader, and also if you're an aspiring leader, this is a great question for you to ask about active listening. Are my team telling me what they think I want to hear? Are they spinning information in a positive light? Are they avoiding the tough conversation that they might need to have with you if they tell you what's really going on? Are they afraid to question you or to challenge you? Are they so wrapped up in not wanting to disappoint you that they're not being honest with you about what's really going on? Now, as a leader, you need some extra skills with your active listening. It's all about listening for comprehension with no agenda and no judgment. You want to understand what they're saying. You want to actively seek some input from other people so that you're getting a range of ideas. It can also be useful to you to ask 360, lots of different people about how they're finding your listening style and the impact that it has for them. But you really want to be able to create that atmosphere of trust. And we've talked about this so much in terms of the leadership style that you choose, in terms of your communication, your emotional intelligence, your leadership intelligence, being able to create that atmosphere of trust. We want everyone to be comfortable to share information with you, whether it's good or whether it's bad. And what that means is that you've got to work extra hard to be fully present and to hear what they're saying to you. And your goal here in being a better listener is that others actually feel heard by you. Yes, they feel that they feel heard because they think you're hearing them. I got a bit muddled up there. And what we know is that for leaders, you're then seen as more competent, they trust you more, you're more likable, and obviously that benefits you, that benefits the team, and that benefits the organization, because what we know is that people with higher levels of job satisfaction make higher levels of commitment to the organization. They do better jobs. So thank you very much for listening to me and sharing this with me today. If you've got any questions or comments, please pop them in the chat under this on the platform that you're watching it on. If you're watching replay, #replay would be glorious. If you've got those questions or those comments, I'm more than happy to answer them. Reach out if you feel that there is something that I can do to help you to build your emotional intelligence, your leadership intelligence, or based on today's conversation, your active listening. I'll see you next week when we will break down into more specific techniques so that you can become a better and more active listener. Bye now.